Hello everyone, my name is Boulevard and welcome to Tournament Tactician, the premier tournament tier list for Legends of Runeterra. Nothing crazy happening this week, nothing happening at all this weekend as far as I am aware. There might be a small tournament, maybe a Runeterra Life or something, but we're not going to have a Swiss portion in a day 2 or anything like that. I think the OLS will be back next weekend, and then the Mastering Runeterra folk will probably have something right after the balance patch drops. But we're hitting the point where we're going to slow down on the new deck creation. Last weekend was sort of the premiere of Heimerdinger Nora, and I had talked a little bit about Elise Heimerdinger going into the weekend, and Heimer Nora turned out to be sort of the end game evolution of that kind of deck. And now we've got a new Lulu Poppy deck to pair alongside Poppy Taric, which is still one of the highest performing ladder decks at the moment is Poppy Taric. Lulu Poppy coming in at around a 52% win rate. But I think, we've got three strong regions right now. We've got Ionia, we've got Shadow Isle, we've got Demacia. Seems to be how things are going. Last weekend, going into the Online League Series, the tournament was very Ionia dominated, while the ladder was rather Shadow Isle dominated. And I think we're just kind of in a little Ionia, Shadow Isle, Demacia triangle, which is how you could break down most metas if you really wanted to. And of course, there's all these Shurima decks as well, most often getting paired with either Ionia or Shadow Isle, but honestly, Nasus left something to be desired on the previous weekend, and Nasus seems to have really slowed down its ladder play rate as well, which I think means we might be moving away from the Shadow Isle stuff entirely, but this also depends on how Heimer Nora continues to perform. It is currently the most played deck on ladder. It's not having any insane win rate. It's lower than Pirates was when it was the #1 deck, but that just seems to be the direction that we're headed. Now, Ezkenin did what we expected it to. Still, I think many people would consider this to be one of the best decks in the game, especially in a tournament environment. Nasus, we've got some question marks. It had a poor performance at the Online League Series, but top decks have bad performances every now and then. Sometimes they'll just completely fall off for one event, and then they'll come back with 5 in the top 8 of the next. It all really depends on just how the day played out. So we're not really moving Nasus down based on a poor OLS performance, but I do want to say that the meta seems to be trending away from this as we get more decks injected in, like Heimer Nora sort of coming to rise as the new Shadow Isle deck to take down Pirates. TF Nami, still just one of the best decks in the game. Probably going to expect some Nami nerfs as things come up. And of course, Pirates still doing what they do. Now, as far as changes from last weekend, I had talked about Victor Lee Sin and Akshan Lee Sin, how I forgot to put Victor Lee on the tier list, and then I remembered that Victor Lee is the same regional combination as Ezreal Kennen. And Akshan Lee Sin actually performed very well at the Online League Series. Second most played deck there, tied with, I believe, it doesn't even matter. It was tied for the second most played deck is what I'm really getting at here. It's good. Shurima is still good. Ionia is still good. That's not changing anytime soon. I talked about some ban list, or not ban list, but balance change predictions based on the information that we had a couple days ago when Riot was sort of locking things in the back end. And like Shadow Isle, Ionia, Shurima, Demacia, they just seem so much better than the other regions in the game, and I think they might have to start taking a look at like core cards for these regions, but only time will tell on that one. For now, we're just kind of cruising through. Heimer Nora really popping up as a late game staple here. Not a lot of followers in the deck, but it really sort of takes the Jace Heimerdinger style, like that Shadow Isle Heimer deck. It pumps in a lot more Shadow Isle cards than the Jace Heimer deck did. Like, do not mistake this for anything close to Jace Heimer. Towards the end of its lifespan, Jace Heimer was really only playing Vile Feast and Vengeance as the only Shadow Isle cards in the deck. Some people going as far as to play Piercing Darkness, but Heimerdinger Nora is primarily a Shadow Isle deck, and then you get things like Pokey Stick and Nora, the Mysterious Portal. Whether or not you play the 7-mana spell is kind of up to you, but for the most part, this is just like this value-oriented control Heimerdinger deck. Sneezy Biggle Dust is a really cool way to end the games in this style of deck. So yeah, overall, I think Heimer Nora is pretty cool. It's not doing anything insane, and I'm sure that its tournament play rate will pick up, and could even end up being a top 5 deck by the time the seasonal rolls around, but only time will tell. Red Gwen has actually fallen down a bit. Again, people just seem to be moving away from the Shadow Isle style gameplay in tournament, and even a little bit on ladder. So like Nasus and Red Gwen are really the decks that we talk about when we're looking at victims of the Shadow Isle recession. It's going to be Red Gwen and Nasus are the big ones, but I think Nasus is still putting up enough game against a lot of things. We'll kind of see how this Ionia dominance plays out in tournaments, if sort of the upping of these rally strategies can tone it down a notch, or if Ionia is just going to push out Shadow Isle. But again, it's one of those things where like with the way that the meta has played out so far in tournament, with the Shadow Isle surge and then this Ionia surge and now probably a Demacia surge this weekend, if there is anything to be playing in, I could probably tell you where the meta would end up in 3 to 4 weeks, but it doesn't matter because we have a balance patch in between now and then. And without knowing what that balance patch looks like, there's no real way to know. So it's just kind of going to be fighting for dominance amongst those four rather powerhouse regions, as of course Shurima is still in there. As we sort of end the lifespan on patch 3.15 and get into 3.16. And then tier 3, we're just kind of filtering out decks. There's a lot of things in the filler section that might be coming back, but for the most part, none of these feel particularly real, like Fizz Papercraft. Like, the Papercraft decks are just gone and forgotten. Draven Scion is always something that you could look at, but honestly, we're just in a much more narrow meta than it kind of feels like. You look at even the ladder, and, I think, like, Gwen Sejuani might be the only thing that I'm really missing from here, which, if you're curious where I would put that, it'd probably be down here in tier 3. It seems like I'm constantly overlooking a deck in the last couple of weeks, despite feeling like we're in a very narrow meta. There's only like 10 decks, and somehow I always forget one of them. We'll definitely get Gwen Sejuani on the tier list sometime soon. I will not get Akshan Infinite on the tier list anytime soon, because even the people that shill for that deck refuse to play it. So it's probably not great. Anyway, that is more or less going to do it for me. Low stakes environment, not a lot of decks running around. Yeah, we've got some cool new stuff in Heimer Nora and Lulu Poppy, but we already kind of knew what Heimer Nora was going to look like because it is just an adaptation of the Elise Nora that we had going into the weekend, and Lulu Poppy is just, how many Lulu rally decks do you need to see before you've seen them all? Kind of where we're getting at. Anyway, enjoy things for now, because in about a week these things are going to start to feel stale, but that's when we'll be in the tournament environment for the online league series, and then we'll kind of put this all to bed. We'll have a great idea of what this meta looked like and sort of just shut the lid on it for historical purposes so we can look back at it a little bit later on. But for the most part, yeah, you're just in an Ionian world for now, and if you think you can beat that coming into a tournament weekend, it worked out for Cephalopod at the online league series, then that is what you got to do. So yeah, again, no tournaments that I know of. There might be a small one, but anyway, that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Boulevard, and as always, good luck in your tournaments.